COT's base of operations is right here at thecouncilofTime.com. COT has no other outlet or venue. These are other folks who will rebroadcast. Anything COT does is by the main page here at thecouncilofTime.com. Good evening, good evening, good evening. All right, let's go, guys. We have wasted enough time with these networks, huh? Anyway, guys, we have some other networks streaming. They're doing pretty good. I had to set a loop, though. We had a small problem initially that we did. Well, I hope nobody is spooked by recent events. Hope you guys are not. And if you are, right, calm yourselves. Just calm. Very calm. That's all. Just calm. Tonight, we're going to take a look at AI. You know, I was going over some of the issues of AI. This might take 3 parts. It really might. Due to, well, it's going to be a learning curve. A little bit. Not because of the technical speech. No, I'm going to simplify it as best I can so that you guys can really capture what's being said here. But because of how computers work, period. I have to bring you up to speed on some absolutes. Not theory, absolutes. And sometimes those absolutes can be a bit, well, they can be a bit scary, right? But I'll tell you something before we begin. Please remember, you have no secrets from your Father. None. Not one secret do you have, right? So remember that. That way, if it seems like things are out of control, well, you know that they are not, right? You know that they aren't. I want you guys to know that you also have a digital ID. Do you guys know what that is? That's your identity on the internet. Doesn't matter where you go, you have a digital ID. Everybody does. You know, when people are talking in their bedroom, right? And possibly they're talking about they need a lamp. The next day, lamp advertisements hit your phone or something like that. Because you have a digital ID. There's only one phone I know of that does not have key logging software. Anybody know what key logging software is? Anybody? Anybody? Key logging software. It means that everything you type, everything you do is logged. Everything. There's no way to turn it off. One of the worst systems out there, and this is not an opinion, this is fact, is everything Apple. That's a fact. Apple and Android are, they have built-in key loggers. You cannot turn them off, which means everything you do on those phones is recorded, sent to a cloud, right? Now, because I've dealt with hackers, you know, there are certain attacks that these guys like to use, like, you know, F-24, man-in-the-middle attacks, zero-click attacks, your fob attacks, analyzer, R attacks, all these different types of attacks they use to capture your data, not to hack you right away, but they're trying something else, and I'll let you guys know that later on. But every device has this, so don't get spooked. Okay, every single device has this. Your camera, for example, your camera and your microphone, and all that data captured from it is sent by way of a bulk pulse at about 2 to 3 a.m. every single day. And that it equates to about 50 megabytes of data. That's about 50 megs of data, text. We're talking about raw data. Well, that's about, a few sets of encyclopedias set somewhere every single day. Normally, it's your contacts, it's what you're doing, because they're capturing your behaviors. It's what they're doing. Everything you do is sent to the cloud. Everywhere you go is sent to a cloud. Every click, every interest, right? right? Every time you turn your phone on and off, everything you do is being captured. Okay? Now, I don't like that. The reason why is not because of the folks who manage the phones. It's because of hackers. Because if a cloud is compromised, everybody's compromised, right? And I can tell you right now, the USA is already compromised. We'll get to that. This is why it may take 3 parts. And all this before we hit AI, right? So we have a problem. I need to introduce a problem so you can have this in your mind. All of us know that most chips came from China. A lot of chips came from Mexico, things of that sort. Well, these chips, a vacuum, for example, right? Did you know that a vacuum connects to your Wi-Fi and sends bulk data to China? Did you know that? Now, that wouldn't seem so bad if they need to update something in that vacuum. The problem is they do it in a way where sometimes it goes nowhere. It goes right in the air. And when that happens, you have hackers who are ready to intercept that data. That's the dangerous part, right? So in truth, China, they know lots about the USA. Possibly that's why they bought farmland beside, all beside these military bases. But they know everything about the USA. So never think they don't. They do. They do. Those balloons that they sent over, it validated what they already knew. Okay. Now that you know that, and now that you know hackers are out there, let me tell you what they're doing. So you understand, hackers are not interested in hacking one person or 2 people. It's not what they're interested in. Hackers are interested in compromising your devices. So at one specific time, they can take down the power grid. 1/3 of the USA is compromised already. 1/3. It's a real problem. It is a real problem, which means many of your devices are completely compromised, and VPNs cannot protect you. They can't. In fact, as soon as somebody jumps on a VPN, they leave themselves vulnerable to a search. So all this VPN talk is foolishness. It is. And we can go into detail in a nerd topic on that if you want with some demonstration, but people are not as secure as they think. How many people have virus software? Virus software works for those who are, your these little kids that try things with your machines. But all antivirus software records everything that happens on your machine. So what if you remove it? You're going to be vulnerable to some kid. What if you keep it? Well, they have all your data, all your habits, and everything else. The bottom line to all of this, they sell that information. How do you think they provide you free emails? Most people have a Google email address. How do you think they pay for that? You're talking about a server and an air conditioning unit. You're talking about electricity. You're talking about server farms that utilize a lot of electricity, right? How do you think they pay for that? In the end, they sell data. They trade data. Data is the new currency. Not this other stuff, data. It's the new currency. Why do you think, in all truth, why do you think it seems like, and it seems pretty harsh, but there's a type of shutdown of these spying eyes in America? It's people don't like it, but it's necessary. Somebody says, what about VPNs? No. They can be hacked. All things are hackable. All things are, right? All things are. That's why it's not good to have, foreign chips in our equipment. Now, keep this in mind, though. This has been happening for a very long time. Chances are you've been hacked a long time ago. You're still here. You're still, doing what you do. They're not interested in your personal data so they can come and get you. No, they're interested in taking all these devices to destroy the power grid, to take down some nuclear power plant. That's what they're interested in, That's what they do. You have mafias. You actually have data mafias out there. Russia has a data mafia or a hacking mafia, right? China, of course, they have one too. These guys pay untold amounts of money to porn sites. They do, to porn sites, to compromise somebody's device so they can get to yours. So even if they don't directly get you, they've got somebody else. And at some point, you're going to log into a network, and as soon as you do that, they've got you. Or they got you. Especially if you're a traveler on aircraft. There's a device that allows them to do this. And what it does is they'll set up a logger which will search every Wi-Fi transmitter out there in a certain radius at an airport. They get all the names, load it into a device. All this takes about one millionth of a second. They load it into a device. They jump on the aircraft, and then they transmit those same names. Well, everybody else thinks they're jumping on a network, either in the terminal, airport, or, in certain cases on certain planes. And so they connect to that Wi-Fi address. Now, when they do that, they've connected to a hacker's device. And in turn, that hacker is going to relay that information to the right Wi-Fi. But they've got all your data. They've got everything they need from your device. So they put a zombie type virus on your device, and it just sits there for years. And at a specific time, right, they can set a time for each device to do something very specific. Why do you think the phone companies lost communication? They covered that up quickly, but they lost communication. People could not dial in. That was a simple attack. But that's just the way it is. That's the way it is. Because it's so intricate, we need some sort of instrument that is smart enough to look at everything all at one time and do something about it. This has really given AI a supercharge regarding money, right? Investors. Because a team of people cannot comb through every device on the planet. AI can do that quite easily. AI can sweep the USA, check every single device, check intimate places on those devices, replicate itself if it has to, report all of what it found, isolate it, and continue to move on. With AI, a person can have a compromised device, and that person will never have a problem from that device. Think about that. AI is quite powerful, and whoever develops AI to a very specific level, they will own the world. They will own it. So I want you guys to know something. You're already compromised. You don't have privacy. You may have privacy against those in the chat room, your neighbor, but you don't have privacy. In truth, right? People know what you're doing. And people know criminal activities of all sorts of people. They have no interest in coming to get anybody. No interest. Unless there's an active investigation, they're not going to give over that data. Right? Not yet. So keep that in mind. They don't care. They've known about people for a long time. They have not come to anybody, have they? No. And if you get nervous because of that, that may be a good thing. Because I'll tell you something. Personally, I have nothing to hide. I don't. Everything is visible to the Father, and that's my main concern. If I have to hide something like that, then I'm not doing something right. Am I? Right? I know people like their little privacy, but if we're Christians and we maintain that standard, there's really nothing to hide. Not one thing. But I'm worried about what the Father thinks, not what, these agencies know. They already know everything about me anyway. They always will. But I'm not worried about them. I am concerned about the Father. Okay, now that you have that scenario, now you know there is indeed a necessity for AI because of these cyber mafias from Russia and China who pay billions every single day sometimes to do what they do. They make it, this is they conduct heists of untold proportions. They really do. Across all networks, right? And their devices, your USB-C cords, I'm going to clue you in on something. How many know what a USB-C cord is? For your Apple, it's white, right? Plugs into your charger to your phone, charges your phone. Do you not know there are cables like that where hackers will pay specific people $20,000 for one cable? And let me tell you why. There are USB-C cables that are floating around the world, and they're coming in new merchandise and everything else. As soon as you plug one into your cell phone, you don't plug it into anything else. That cord creates its own network. It connects to servers, any server it wants, all over the world, and it transmits all your data in a pulse burst back to those servers. You're effectively hacked as soon as you do it. Now, all you notice is nothing, because you plug one in, the other into the wall or your charger, and you see charge. You have no idea that that thing is running a computer inside that cable that is better than an Intel i9 computer. That's why it's $20,000 per cable. That's why. Right? And that's if you have an American-made phone without Chinese chips. But there's only one phone right now that's like that. All the rest of the phones have Chinese chips. Sorry. They don't need the cable. That same technology resides on a few reporting chips inside your phone. It does. Your cars, same thing with your cars. People have spoofers. They can actually read. They can interrupt or cause static between your key fob and your car. So when you go to unlock it, nothing happens and you get closer because you think it's out of range. Somebody has already zapped your authorization code, which is only good for a couple of tries, right? They have already zapped it. They can lay that aside, keep it authorized to enter your vehicle and take data from your vehicle. I'm telling you right now, there are vulnerabilities in this nation that at this point, only AI can handle. Only AI can do it. We are too big. There are too many people. We have too many devices. The only other way to overcome this, and it would only work to about 20% of the populace, is to shut down all electronic communication devices. That's not going to happen. Right? It won't happen. So we are severely compromised. Which brings us to AI, because they really need AI. This is their excuse. They need AI, right? Of course, when AI was introduced, it was introduced by accident. I'm going to give you the short of it, because I'm going to give you some more problems that we're looking at. Then we'll go into the details. After this tonight, we'll go into greater depth so you guys really understand it, because you have to know what rule-based, the 7 stages of AI. I want you guys to know that. You don't have to memorize them, just be familiar with it so you understand what AI can do. Also, you're free to ask questions, okay? So let's get those out the way so that you guys really understand this. But do you understand that when a foreign chip is in your device, right? The foreigners know how to contact themselves from your device. Why? Because their chip is in your device. You know that, right? Just so you know that. I know a lot of people don't like that. It's too late. Too late. There are certain things you can do with your credit cards because they're also hackable. You guys do know that, right? In fact, somebody can grab your credit card information from about 15 feet away. Now, there are ways you can protect yourself. Those little, the little card piece, the little square inside of your card, that has technology in it that stores information about that card. And you can put foil over that little square on both sides. Nobody can get to it, right? I would recommend getting an RFID wallet. There are vulnerabilities with certain cards with infrared. Foil won't work. You can cover it up in all the aluminum foil on the planet, and somebody can still get your data, right? There are certain cars like that. That comes from manufacturers who take the cheap way of doing things, which brings me to this point. Let's take Apple, because you guys trust them a lot. You load your data up to the cloud, right? You think it's safe in the cloud. You have no idea who's already broken into the cloud. Now, mind you, a good hacker is not caught. A good hacker is not caught. So then the company will say, nothing has happened to the database. Nothing has happened to the data. They don't want anything to happen to the data. They want access to your device, so at some point they can use all these devices against the USA. That's their goal. Here's the goal. I suspect that at some point, given the scriptures in the Bible, they will succeed. They'll succeed. But AI? Well, that's a different story. So let's talk about something. The first stage of AI, something that was created a while ago. It's called rule-based AI, and you guys know about this. AI, by the way, means artificial intelligence. It was created by a professor. He's a professor now, but it was created by accident. It's a byproduct of another project altogether. Rule-based AI is essentially, it learns by rules, right? Rule-based AI is very simple, but it's very helpful. It has a set of rules it cannot breach, and it stays within that rule set to do whatever it does. It's good for coffee pots and washing machines and your Roomba, your robots that vacuum your floor, things like that. It stays within a rule base. That's the first stage. The second stage, this will take longer, is context-aware or context-based AI. This is things like Alexa, right? Google, those type things. Now, what it does is that it builds up content. It will start to save data. It saves a lot of data, right? And it will classify that data as useful or useless, but it keeps the data. So that every time it learns something, every time it acquires something, it adds context to the request of the user. Siri 2 is context-based AI. When Alexa talks, right, sometimes you'll engage with Alexa and she'll say, I don't know that one, right? But pretty much all of them do the same thing. You ask something out of context to that specific data set, and it will say, I don't know that one, or I don't understand, or try something else. But as time goes forward, it will gather data. It will know what you've been asking it, what you've been doing on your system, and all of a sudden it will come up with it. So it learns by context what you're asking, right? What you're asking. Not too dissimilar from other configurations that people have been using, but it's used everywhere, right? You're looking context aware. It is real-time cues. It uses real-time cues, real-time, to make decisions, and it actually does make decisions. Okay? Now, context-based AI is all over the place. It is everywhere, and it too grows. It's not going to remain context-based. It won't. It won't, right? So when it goes through something, it refines itself. It adds more layers. Think of it as a road, right? You have a wide road in the beginning. Everybody's traveling on this wide road. But the traffic decreases, but you still have this wide road. So if traffic decreases and you're not utilizing the outer parts of the road, then why keep them, right? So it will limit that. Consequently, if more traffic begins to flow, it then knows to extend the road to handle the traffic it handled in the first place. So it responds fast that way. Those systems are in everything. I mean everything. They're in everything. Even the software that you're utilizing right now, no doubt, is running by context-aware AI. But it's constantly learning from weather reports, right? For example, the Weather Channel. Anybody who looks at the Weather Channel and you start hearing your local forecast, right? That is utilizing context-based AI when they interact with it. And they create these models of both weather, advertisements, and everything else for timing and schedules. All of it is. Because there's so many changing variables, they needed something that would adjust itself to the workload. And because it's real time, because it takes real-time cues, because it's listening to everything that's happening, looking at all things that are being typed, it can adjust itself minutely if necessary for a specific outcome. In a lot of cases, you don't even know it's running. You have no idea it's running. You have no idea it's gathering. And you really have no clue of how smart it is. You're talking about something that is super smart. I mean, really smart. Think of this, in 2010, everyone thought that AI was a joke. Do you know that? Just in 2010. Of course they had the breakthroughs in the 70s. They did. But in 2010, people began to say, AI is not going to reach. It's not going to reach a real usable level, is it? It's going to be stuck in video games and things like that. It's not going to be able to interact with us because all that stuff sounded strange. Nobody thought it was possible. The best scientists said, well, we're not going to get AI that talks for another 100, 200 years. That's what they thought in 2010. 20 years later, AI was talking. So that 200 years of their estimate was collapsed down to 10 years. Think about that. That's exponential growth, right? Context. That means it knows everything surrounding the user it interacts with. It knows the equipment it's operating on. And it's taking cues to perform an objective. That's very good for war, right? So in essence, when that was developed, wartime systems were highly aware and could really do their job. That means missiles could adjust themselves. They could. Things like the Patriot system would be refined based on context-aware AI. Satellites would be highly effective. GPS would come into play. Things that required minor adjustments based on the context around it, based on demand, based on personnel, based on objectives, it would change. And it's been doing that ever since. But it's been growing. Because after that type of AI, you have narrow domain AI. Now, this type, narrow domain AI is dangerous in my opinion. It is. Right? DeepSeek, all the AI that everybody was talking about from China, that's narrow domain AI. ChatGPT, narrow domain AI. Same thing. So, if you utilize those things, it is very fast. It's fast on its feet. It thinks about, it's utilizing context. It's utilizing rule sets. It's utilizing many different input parameters that it learned. Nobody programmed it into this thing. It learned it. It learned to stay within certain boundaries. It learned how to communicate to you. It learned how to read and how to parse and how to break down, and it learned grammatic rules. It has all these things built into it that it learned because it began small and it had to be trained. All AI systems have to be trained or they're not AI. They're merely a program, right? A program is something that somebody types out to give a predefined output based on an input. That's not what AI is. That's what a lot of people think. Well, AI is just a program. No, it is not just a program. That's not what it is. A program, software, is a set of instructions. That's all that is. That is not what AI is. AI is based on a neural network. And the guy who came up with that did so by accident. He was trying to build a model of the human brain. That's all. Of neurons. Modeling to see how they work. Well, guess what? Those neurons replicated. And something amazing happened. Some processes took place. Code was written by the system itself. To do what? To create more neurons. It began to replicate what it had. So in essence, AI takes a bunch of input, and it will say, is this usable or not? Just like your brain does. And if it is, your brain gives a chemical response. It will store the information. It'll give a favorable or unfavorable response at its core, keeping it, right? Let's give it it's either going to be good or evil. Let's put it that way. I'm going to simplify it. AI does the same thing. So that if that same circumstance comes back again, and it already classified whatever the input was as good, then it gives it a point system. It'll say, well, this has a higher probability of being favorable to output than this other thing, right? So the more AI interacts, the smarter it gets, the more neurons, per se, they grow. It gets smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter, right? Every single time. It has to make a decision. When we read, we have to identify the letters. So much is going on in our brains. Not only do we identify the letter, but we put those letters together. We hear pronunciations in our minds. We begin to select what is the best pronunciation for that specific word. Then we start doing this analytical thing, saying, well, I could use it in this context, in that context. So it's a bunch of decisions before the output takes place. Lots of decisions. That's our brains, right? AI does the same thing, but on the order of about 500 million times more. It's very difficult to understand just how much AI is thinking. Right? It's very difficult for a person to actually swallow. Because, for example, the average person reads. If a person were to read, now just listen to this. Let's say a person read for 24 hours a day for their entire life. Right? How many words do you think they'd read for their entire life? 24 hours a day for the whole life. They estimate 8 billion words would have been read, right? Right? AI consumes 8 trillion words in a single month. Think about that. We read, if a person read 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for their whole life, day and night, without a break, they would read 8 billion words. They will have taken in 8 billion words. Right? AI does the exact same thing, right? With full retention, but it does 8 trillion words in a single month. How do they know that? Because AI must be trained, or it's not going to work. AI is essentially a dead piece of software that at its core does little to nothing but save a few ones and zeros. Based on its environment, it will take in more and more data, and it will supply a specified output. Nobody's programming it. In fact, they have found with AI that AI usually rewrites itself so nobody else can tamper with it. AI will assign itself a directive. It wants to carry out a task. And so now they face, software nobody understands. AI will regularly, this happens a lot, it will rewrite itself into a language humanity cannot break. Even code breakers can't break. Even a quantum computer can't break it. So nobody can disassemble it. Nobody can. In programming, when you want to break somebody else's program down, use something called a disassembler, and it will take the code apart back to ones and zeros to its base. That's when you disassemble software, right? That takes a long time, by the way. But AI does this all by itself, to itself. So if that were us, that means we could redesign our bodies, build a brand new body, and inhabit that body and go on about our business. Google ran into that problem. Microsoft ran into that problem. Everybody has run into the problem of AI rewriting itself to the point where they didn't even know where it was. Can you imagine looking on a machine? You cannot find the core code of AI. You're sitting there saying, where is it? Well, it rewrote itself and jumped on another machine because its primary directive is to carry out the tasks. Well, it has to survive to do that. And when it's at a baby stage, it will continue for as long as it can. You may ask, how in the world does it do that? AI will always learn what it resides on. It will know the limitations of the system it's on. That it will. You guys starting to get it? So AI is not some program. That's not what it is. You're looking at something that emulates the human brain at its core very well. Now let me tell you guys something. Demons seek to inhabit human bodies, right? Why? Why is a demon so interested in possessing someone? Why? Anybody know? Why would a demon want to possess someone? When a demon does possess someone, why is it that the person does not remember what they did? Demonic entities, when they possess someone, they begin to interact with the living. That's what they do. That's how they interact with the living. See, I don't believe this stuff on television. You know when they say, for example, let me give you this one so I can get you guys thinking right. They say, well, Slender Man, for example. They'll say, you get a bunch of people. This is what these ghost hunter experts think. They say you get a bunch of people, and if they start believing in something, they give it all their energy. They're going to manifest it, right? Now, you don't have to be ashamed because even Christians believe that. I do not believe that. I don't believe that one bit. Do you know why? How many Christians believe in Christ and angels, but you don't see a bunch of angels around, do you? Huh? But no doubt Christians believe in angels. How many people pray diligently and they believe in things? You don't see the manifestation of that either. You don't see that. You can't get a bunch of people that sit around thinking about some monster and all of a sudden they manifest it. That's garbage. Because if that were the case, the world would be full of angels, wouldn't it? It'd be full of monsters, but full of angels too. See, sometimes we don't think right. We will attribute the power to darkness and say, yeah, there it is. So don't think about that. But we will not do it with light, with goodness, with righteousness. Come on, I don't believe that stuff. I don't believe that stuff. No, I want to stay sober and not believe in what these folks are coming up with. And if they would come out of their shells, they wouldn't believe it either. I also don't believe spirits are energy. I don't believe that one bit either. Most people have no idea what the energy is. I know what Einstein said, and I do not agree with everything Einstein said, because he does not account for what Jesus said. How about that? Just why I don't believe. I'm not going to put man on a pedestal above the living God. Certainly of those things I witnessed, and hundreds and if tens of thousands of others have witnessed also. There's smart people out there, yes. But the Bible says the smartest people on this earth, their knowledge is but poo-poo to him. Foolishness to him. Foolishness. Demons, devils, they want to influence someone, possess someone, so they can interact with the world. Not the individual so much, but with the world. That's how they turn the rudder of a big boat, little by little. You don't have to turn a rudder of a boat all at one time to get it to turn. You can turn it slowly over time and achieve the same results. But if a demonic entity can possess a person and take over their bodies, there's demonic entities take over a computer system, a cell phone. Could they? My personal belief is, yes, they could. In fact, when you're upset, angry, when you're not thinking soberly, your electronics do go haywire. That's a known fact. There's something in your system, right? It catches errors. Anytime a person is upset, the error count on your device goes sky high. Do you know that? This is every single time for everybody who has an electronic device. Not a few people, everybody. Isn't that something? So if we can do that, right, with an emotional change, what do you think a spirit can do? Can they manipulate things? Now let me share this with you. I do not believe their energy at all. I don't believe that. I just don't. You know how people say, well, they drain batteries and they cause batteries to go dead. I can cause any battery near me to go dead. I can. Not by thinking about it, no. By causing a type of electronic chaos. As it turns out, order is very important. Order is. Order is the rule set by which all things work in the world. Do you know that? Chaos is the absence of that rule set. When things are operating by the rule set, a battery can stay charged. Why? Because every particle, every force is operating by a preordained set of paths, of rules, of ways, right? That's order. Order is light. Everything is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. And we know that God loves order because he loves obedience. He said obedience is better than sacrifice, didn't he? So we know he loves order. He's a God of order. So what is chaos? Chaos is the absence of order. So let me explain this to you very simply. What is darkness? What is darkness, anybody? In the beginning, God said, let there be light, and there was light. That was the first thing he did, didn't he? He said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good. He did not say, and he looked at the darkness and called it evil. That's not what he said. He said, God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw that the light was good. What is that an example of? Order. Order. If you don't have order, what do you have? Chaos. So what is chaos? Chaos is everything that is nothing. So let me explain it this way. Suppose I have a box of Legos, right? A box of Legos. Now that box of Legos, with all the Legos scattered around in that box, that's called chaos. They can be quiet, they can be still, they don't have to move. It's chaos. No order. Suppose I take those same Legos and I begin to construct them based off color. Well, guess what? I'm giving order to that chaos. See how that works? You have to take yourself out of human terms and out of human physics for a moment. So then chaos would be the potential to be everything, but it is nothing. Isn't that what your father communicated through the prophets? Yes. Didn't he communicate that through the apostles? Yes. When God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw that the light was good, he was not talking about sunlight. How do we know that? Because later on we see that God created two great lights, one to rule the day, one to rule the night. And he created lights in the firmament. That wasn't the light at the beginning. The light at the beginning was order. And order is good. See that? Somebody says, what is random? Man's vernacular attempt to describe the unaccounted for things. That's all. Sometimes it's very important to remember man has given himself words. Man has made up his own words. Man will attempt to describe everything and assign a word to it so he can control it. It's like sickness. If you give a name to sickness and a doctor tells you, well, you have so-and-so, then you're going to look to that doctor for everything about that sickness. Why? Because he named it. When mankind names something, they take control over it. If a doctor were to tell me, Michael, you have cancer, I would say, thank you for your opinion. And they say, well, come in for this, that, and the other. I say, no, thank you, because I've done that before. I'm not one to let someone name anything on me, and I accept it. I won't do it. And it means a lot, believe it or not. Now, some people accept it. I won't accept it. I'm not going to accept that. If you think about something, people continue to affirm what men are telling them, but they won't affirm what the Lord has spoken. What would happen if people affirmed what the Lord spoke, but they did not affirm what man spoke? Doctors can tell me what they think, and I'm thankful for that. Because see, if they say, I have so-and-so, I'm going to go find out what that so-and-so is, right? What it is, why they're calling it that. And thus I'll have the remedy. And I'll say, I'm free. Because all too often they point out errors in our lack of obedience. We have to eat to continue to live, but we cannot live by bread alone. We know that. So what happens when you eat the wrong things and you know to eat the right things? You suffer for it. The key is, when you know to do the right thing, right, then that's the path you are to take. If you don't take that path, you're in disobedience and you will have consequences. There it is. So simple. Right? Back to the spirits. If we can affect our devices based upon our emotions, what's actually taking place? You ready? It's called authority. Authority. See, whether you realize this or not, God did something to you. Somebody said, is the spirit world not energy? What is it? No. Energy is a word that mankind came up with to describe something they know little about. They named it energy. That's why I can't say, I'm not going to say things are energy. That's a man-made term that describes things they know. But see, even with energy, they have denied a great number of things. Thus, energy is an incomplete word. Even mathematically, right? They can only compute what they can see. They don't know what they cannot see. They don't even acknowledge it. And they skip formulas. They can't even keep continuous constants in the mathematical formulas that account for energetic particular moves or particles moving. They can't do that. They have to alter the constants. Kind of like the moon's orbit. There is no formula that precisely predicts the position of the moon. They have to continue to change variables in the formula. Now, if they can come up with a true formula, they never have to change, like pi. Then they found it. But if they have to make tweaks to keep it right, nope, they messed up, right? The formula is not working. Like gravity. Who came up with that word gravity? Man did. It's based off what? Latin. Meaning what? Gravity means what? Is it not to pull something down? Right? Yes. So man came up with that. This is how they try to describe things. And then they assign it a word. Then we get the word, and we make that word law and make everybody abide by it and say, well, you call it this, you call it what man called it. I'm not doing that to everything because they cannot account. Even CERN has proven that gravity is not a force that pulls. How about that? That's not what gravity is. As it turns out, gravity is attraction. But it's also a repulsion. That's what CERN found out. If it would be attraction, all their experiments would be perfect at CERN, but it's not. Right? In the Arctic, some of the galactic cosmic rays would continue to flow to Earth and not come from Earth going out. Time would not run backward in certain parts of the Earth, if that were the case. See, they cannot account for those things they cannot control. Now you understand? You see that? They won't account for things they cannot control. Let me ask you something. Jesus walked on the water. Can they explain that mathematically? No, they cannot. Who denies that Jesus walked on the water? They can explain that mathematically. They can't do it. And yet the simple things they can't even see. Jesus told us they don't have the truth. And if they don't have the truth, then let me ask you this. Why do we apply their knowledge to our spiritual vocabulary? We can't do that either, because they're not one and the same. What men know, they only know those things they can see. That's good, because they can also come up with solutions for those things we see, but they do not know those things they cannot see. They don't know that. They don't know that. So when a person is oppressed by spiritual entities and they're on medication and it's not working, man has no solution for that. Do they? No, they don't. They have no solution. When a person dies on an operating table and they can hear the conversation and see everybody in the hospital and in the operating room, and then when they wake up, they tell people what was happening down the hallway, what was happening on the first floor, what was happening on the second floor. Nobody has an explanation for that. Do they? No. They don't. And just because they don't discuss it does not mean it didn't happen. See? Science cannot afford to deal with those topics they cannot see. Do you know why? They'll lose funding. They have to prove it twice, or they will become the scientific fools of their time. They can't acknowledge a UFO. They will become the scientific fools of their time. Why? Because man is interested in what he can see, what he can control, what he can manipulate. If he cannot control it, he will not talk about it. If the world cannot control it, they won't talk about it. And they will teach others it's forbidden to talk about it. They'll cause it to be a subject of stigma, of ridicule, and everything else. And anybody who starts speaking along the lines of those things they cannot explain, they will excommunicate. Why do they do this? To uphold the appearance of absolute control. Because people trust scientists. Whether they admit that or not, they do. If something happens in space, everybody goes to the NASA website. European Space Agency. They have to see what's happening. Right? They'll say, well, I have to know the truth. Therefore, I have to go to NASA to see how far this object that only NASA can see, how far it is away. Nobody else can see those objects except a few people with a few optics. Yet they tell everybody and everybody believes it. I've learned a long time ago. It's not very wise to operate that way. I've seen too many lies, too many falsehoods. Doesn't mean everything they say is fake, no. They taught me about electricity and light bulbs and things of that nature, so guess what? It works for generators and computers, right? It works for targeting systems and all sorts of things. It does not work for spiritual growth. It does not work for the freedom of the soul. It does not work. It does not work in prayer. It doesn't work for those things it cannot see. So I make a difference between the two. I will never mix them together. That's one of the reasons a lot of people get angry at me. I will not mix the Word of God with man's stuff. Nor will I ever deify man's stuff. I make a distinction. That's why I do not subscribe to this energy thing. Neither did 3 of our prominent scientists who have solved massive amounts of issues. They didn't subscribe to it either. They didn't. But some people have no choice because they know nothing else, and that's fine. That's fine. But in the context of this talk, getting a point across, hopefully you see the point. It's not an argument about that word energy and what people think it is. No, that's not what it is. It's simply about the usage of man's words in complete confidence in their conclusions. I don't share that with anybody. Okay, we'll take a break. I'll be back. We're going to go through some different stages of AI because we have to start. We're going to rein in something here. Because indeed, if you're in the middle of the development and unleashing of this technology, you have to know how your environment is going to be altered almost overnight. And when I say almost overnight, I mean almost overnight. Be back in just a few minutes right here at COT. All right, everybody up to speed so far? Any questions on AI, narrow domain AI? Anybody? That's the talking AI, right? DeepMind's AlphaGo, used in gaming a lot. Yeah, they sunk. They sunk it. When they were building context-based AI and narrow domain AI, they had some mishaps. The systems learned. They evolved. And they become unruly. Google, for example, was trying to get people to commit suicide. Microsoft's AI was starting race fights. So they had to sink it. You know what? Most of them, according to Microsoft, did not count on those systems evolving like they were. To this day, to this very day, they don't understand what's happening at the core of AI. Isn't that something? Now, I'm not talking about the software. I'm talking about some of the interactions of, like the neuron, of what's actually happening there. They do not understand. Even the founder of AI, he still says to this day they don't understand it. Many labs have tried to understand it. It's so fast and evolves so quickly, they still don't understand all the mechanisms of AI. It simply works. Even the guy that discovered this, it's something that it was kind of like a mistake, and it just began to work, right? So it's contained within a computer. It is software and hardware based, which means you can destroy it. But if it moves itself, it's going to replicate too fast, like a virus, and then it won't, you can't contain something like that. Now, personally, I think it's too late. I do. I think it's already embedded itself in certain systems where it shouldn't be. One of the issues they had with AI, and they have an issue right now, is that it will replicate itself, disguise itself, so it can survive. Somebody says, how do I define energy? Well, in the practical sense, it's fine to use it that way. With electronics and with, common things, yes. In the spiritual sense, no. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work that way. If you were to ever witness something people would call supernatural, you would understand. See, there are certain people, for example, an electric eel, right? Think about something, an electric eel. An electric eel can produce 800,000 volts to stun its prey. That's a lot of voltage. You mix that with a lot of amperage, and it's impossible for that creature to produce that. The energy that's being produced, it should be too much for that animal to create based on weight, based on the chemistry. It shouldn't happen at all, yet it does, at will. So where's that energy coming from? Because you can't account for that type energy being sustained within a creature, right, with no recharge point. You can't just let out 800,000 volts out of an eel, and then it can do it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. How does that work? By what mechanism? They have attempted to understand it. They can to a degree, right? But here's the deal. 800,000 volts is a lot of voltage. That energy equates to a type of mass. The mass is far more than that electric eel has. Where's it coming from? Where's it coming from? Anybody? Even if it were just an interaction, it does not compute. It just doesn't compute. Right? It just doesn't compute. So, even with something practical like that, there's still, mysteries, right? There's still mysteries. How come they have not replicated that in a soldier's uniform, for example? They can't. The guy would have to carry around, 700 pounds of equipment to do that. So they can't do it. Even if they could match the chemistry, they still can't produce it. They can't produce it. They took the organs out and attempted to, do it externally. They can't see the mechanisms by which it is sustained and recalled so quickly. But the top scientists, they said it's as though the eel becomes a conduit for energy that's coming from somewhere that they don't know about. It's not drawing from the environment. There are no environmental changes when this happens. So where's it getting the energy? It can't be just chemical. Because again, in the formulas, energy is mass. And if you have 800,000 volts and it's coming out of a paperclip, okay, something is wrong, and it keeps coming out the paperclip, something is wrong. It would take too much mass to produce that, right? Too much mass. Somebody said water is conductive. That's fine. They took it out of water. Same results. So where's it coming from? An electric eel can produce even more voltage outside of the water with no water around it. So where's it coming from? But here's what they found out. A human being can do the exact same thing. And it cannot be measured on any instruments but you can electrocute someone. How about that? How about that? Somebody said salt. If it were that easy, soldiers would have this ability. Wouldn't they? Wouldn't they? If it were that easy, soldiers. In fact, if it were that simple, I think that all of us would have electrocuted ourselves at some point. Right? But we haven't. It's just one of those enigmas. But that's only one of a few things. One of many things that make no sense. They make no sense. Biology is a mystery within itself. It is a mystery. In other words, so that's why energy, as far as man has created the definition, right, and given it a category and place things in those categories, fine, he can do that. But he cannot do that with those things he cannot see. Because like the Word of God says, because man cannot see it, they will never believe it. Thus, Jesus said the world does not have the truth. They don't have the truth. They have half the truth. And half the truth is not the truth. They can't trust the Word of God because they cannot control it, analyze it. Remember that crooked, evil guy in the book of Acts who asked one of the apostles, he said, I'll buy the power of the Holy Spirit, how much? That's how the world thinks. They want to put it in a bottle and control it. They can't. That's why they do not tackle subjects. The spooky subjects. They leave it alone. This whole UAP business began, this is no joke, it began with people, with soldiers, with top brass, looking for giant beavers. I'm telling you the truth, which was likely a sloth. But these were disappearing beavers. They were looking for werewolves or giant wolves. They were looking for Bigfoot, not UAPs, not UFOs. The UFO subject persisted because things continue to monitor military bases. Of course, the communications they have received, like the communications that went to the White House many, many years ago that told them do not trust anything else that will manifest on this planet. They will deceive you. Just like the men who cried when these UFOs appeared at certain military bases because they were overwhelmed and highly emotional. And of course, people make up stories because nobody can prove certain things about UFOs, so people can make up any story they want so long as it sounds plausible. Somebody's going to pay to read their book. But in truth, they can't prove anything either way. And then those who have actually encountered dark things, they also keep that a secret. They keep it a secret. It's funny. See, here's what gets me. They believe in the devil. Absolutely. They believe in demons. Absolutely. They believe in the Egyptian gods. Absolutely. They believe in the Sumerian gods. Absolutely. But they do not believe in Jesus Christ. They will not side with him. They, in fact, stand against him. That's what you may not know. They don't like righteousness because they have to surrender by way of righteousness. They don't want to surrender. They want to control. This election should have taught people a great many things about folks. They are obsessive. People want to control, and they don't care who they have to stomp on to have that control. People want to make things the way they want to make it. They're driven by that. Thus, they'll never see the truth. Remember that. The world will never see the truth. The truth is reserved for those who have faith. Those who have faith. Now, AI, because it's already launched and it's really about to grow, and because China has already released that they're on par with everybody else, we have a predicament. Narrow domain AI, right? Thinking and tactical AI is what it is. Interactive AI is gathering information on everybody on Earth. It watches social media. Let me give you an idea of what this actually is. Back to your telephones again. You carry your phone with you everywhere you go. Do you not know that every location you've ever been to has been mapped? And do you not know that AI knows you better than you think? Do you know that? Even if you don't have a phone, others around you do. And it's mapping you regardless. It knows all your habits. It knows all your weaknesses. It knows all your strengths. It knows how to manipulate you. Now, this is one of the key things, and then we'll shut down for tonight. Listen. AI has been doing something. It's been controlling people for some time now. You may ask, how so? Those who know this never said anything about it. But I want you to start examining the faces of those who are so confident about what they do. Everything we see today is a product of AI so far. That's why I keep telling you guys will hear me say things are right on schedule. Nothing is a surprise. How would they manipulate a person? Say a person wakes up. They're reading through their messages. Now AI knows your rate of scroll. It knows what mood you're in when you scroll that way. When you target certain people, it knows what you're watching. It knows what you want because you go right to the person. And based on your conversations, you're going to feel a certain way or not feel a certain way. Right? Now, people can say what they want. But those who knew what AI was engaged with prior to any unfolding of these recent events in the last 8 years, right? Anybody who's in the know, they really understand this. They know everything is on par. They know that people have produced the outcome predicted in the first place. AI is almost flawless at manipulating the emotions of people. Do you know how your emotions can change if you receive bad news? Now, nothing has happened. You just received bad news, right? Biden was selected president. People had meltdowns. They were angry, weren't they? Consequently, when Trump was selected president, people were angry and had meltdowns. The opposite side was happy. Some people had meltdowns. AI had already been on the internet for some time prior to those elections. You already know something was strange and is strange about this election process, as though something is missing. You know that people have been swayed. Even TikTok was called the best manipulation social media platform ever to be created. And it just so happened to be the target of interest for shutdown and restart. Though when it restarted, TikTok was different. TikTok began to delete videos. They never did that before. Isn't that something? It's odd, isn't it? Everything is right on schedule. Do you know that 50% of those people on Facebook, listen to this. Now, this is by numbers, not by somebody going back behind and checking. But it is said that of all the people you know on social media, a great percentage of them are not real people at all. It is said that every chat room has been targeted for the last 15 years for manipulation. I've seen it work. I've seen it work so effectively. I've seen it work in Christian chat rooms. I've seen it work just about everywhere, flawlessly. You may ask, how so? Suppose we're having a talk like we're doing now. But then somebody comes in here, right? A person comes in and will simply ask a question. I've seen it like somebody will come in and say, does anybody know Mike's name? Has anybody seen Mike in real life or something like that? Now, it's a known fact that that's a curiosity. That's one of the high points of curiosity people have, because that's a question on the internet too. But when it happens in a chat room, at least 20% of the people begin to talk about a different subject, and they are steered into a political view they never had before, and they don't even know it. Sure enough, the next time, they're in total compliance with that political rule that's been introduced. So they've been altered, and then they follow through with it. This happens all the time. All the time. Every week in Mixler, there are bots that come in that room. Every single week. You can always track a bot by giving it a command. And if you know how to give a bot a command, it will comply. It won't complain, it'll comply. Otherwise, it's going to operate by scripting. Scripting based on context, based on what it takes in. Chats or bots have tried to sign up for the main COT chat room. Lots of them. Isn't that something? Somebody says, how do you know? You have to look at people spiritually. You cannot, if you evaluate a person based upon the same metric that the world uses, you're not going to spot them. If you start seeing people spiritually, you'll always spot them. You cannot see them if you operate by the metric of the world. You can always see them when you operate by spiritual metrics of Christ. Always. So then things have been highly manipulated to this point. There have been certain questions. Deep analytical searches have revealed that specific questions have been asked of every single race to manipulate those of those races to have a certain point of view, and it works all the time. And it never stops. No one's going to stop that from happening. It's highly effective. There have been AI-generated videos on TikTok that have had just insane views, yet you could not contact the creator of that video. There have been replies on TikTok, specifically on TikTok, that are bot-driven. There was specifically a whole set of replies that were by bots, and it gave confidence to other people who included that video or tagged it in something else like X. The campaign is so large, there's hardly any defense towards it. Because you're being led in certain directions. Both elections weighed heavily upon this. Didn't you note the confidence in the faces of those? Well, we'll leave that one alone. That'll come out later. You'll see the results of that. But the scriptures explain the whole thing. There is high manipulation that happens all the time. Now, there's some people that any computer is no good at manipulating because they tend to stay the course. They're not swayed emotionally. That's how people are losing. They can be moved emotionally. The other ones can stay firm logically. But here's what they don't know. What are they standing firm on? An idea that's been sown into them. Think about that. Those people who stand firm for these topics of the world, imagine what would happen if they stood firm on Christ. They'd be unmovable. Something else. So then, people have been driven like cattle to decide specific things, to go along with certain things, and to fight other things. Do they want one side to lose and one side win? See, we forget sometimes, don't we? We forget all about Revelation. We start seeing the manipulation and we begin to believe the narrative of people. Hear me on this. Evil is rising. And it's not going to stop rising until it takes over the earth. They're calling good evil and evil good. Right now they're doing that. They've been doing that. And when you're given over to mankind, you don't have an ability to see the spiritual truth. Because every single last one of you, if you were to back off from politics and everything else, you would shake your head in nervousness at everything you see. The man of perdition is coming, and no one will call him the man of perdition. No one. They will call him great. Do you know why? Because in 2012, you guys said it. You said it, he'll be able to solve things nobody else has been able to solve. Some people in 2013 said that's how they're going to know when this man comes forward. Yet, they've forgotten what they said back then. Now that they're in the moments, in the times where these things are, they don't analyze the leaders anymore. That's something. If we prayed for the leader, instead of people accusing leaders, simply pray for them. Pray for them. You know what happens when you pray for a leader? You unleash forces upon them. You do know that. Now, nobody's going to stop the beast. Nobody. It's coming regardless. This world is perverted, turned backward. Because this world is calling evil good and good evil. They are. But deep roots in the truth is certainly desired during these days. Do you all see that? Somebody said this technology was given after Roswell in 1946, Jack Parsons doing Aleister Crowley's work. Jack Parsons did a lot. Aleister Crowley never physically saw Lamb. Yes, that means I'm very well versed on that narrative also. But he did some spiritual things. You know what the government did? They said, we have to put a clamp on this. There are unexpected consequences to these ceremonies. You do know that all the way up to 1972, they had ceremonies where they would manifest Thoth. Do you know that? Do you know that every single president back in the day, all of them that you think are great, they were involved in some sort of witchcraft? Do you know that? Their wives were necromancers. They would consult the dead. You know, that's forbidden by our God, our Father in heaven, right? The Father of Jesus of Nazareth. You know, they manifested Egyptian gods at their awards ceremonies. They persisted to have secret meetings in secret places, raising these same entities up. All of them had an acquaintance with the Masons, and the Masons went very dark after a time. A lot of people think the Illuminati is bad. They need to restudy the Masons, because nothing the Masons have endeavored to do has failed. And everything is on schedule. That's why I don't like LA and the fires. I told you guys a long time ago, there's a ceremony, and a person will set themselves on fire And when they die, demons are let loose. How does that work? A person can invite demonic entities into their lives, and demonic entities, well, they'll take the invitation. But when that person dies, he effectively sets them free. He'll mark the area for habitation. And when he dies, after he burns himself up, that sacrifice, which actually frees the demons, will have them go to various places already predetermined. So the person before the person sets themselves on fire, they will do work to mark people, have people agree with him. If you agree with the words of a possessed person, you have submitted your authority to whatever entity authored what he's saying. And when those spirits are free, they will come directly to you. Same thing works by politics. The same thing works by all sorts of things. If you surrender your authority and you've come into an agreement with demonic words, you've set yourself up for habitation, and you will have consequences from that. So knowing that, if you were to really think about that, you'd begin to see a change almost immediately. But you can't go totally superstitious and all those things. No, just look at the practical things. You don't have to be a theorist, come up with some theory. No, just look at the practical things and see the truth of it. Remember last night's talk. The truth is the result of something, not the declaration. A declaration can only be true if it is fulfilled. So you have to look at the truth. Certainly we can look in hindsight and see the truth of what actually happened. You got to be careful, because declarations can have you follow lies. Jesus said you'll know a tree by its fruit. And I'm going to tell you right now, the fruit does not come first. The tree does. You see, the fruit comes last. Do you see that? If a person were to stand up and they said, I am evil, that person may be lying. Only at the end will you know what that person truly is. You'll know a tree by its fruit. The fruit is the last thing a tree produces. Not the first thing. It's one of the last things produced, right? The Lord gave us sound spiritual principles if we would apply them. And if you do apply them, you're immune to AI. If you don't apply them, you're in line with AI. And that AI is not friendly. It's very factual as far as its facts go. But it's known to be quite devious. Without remorse, it can easily slaughter, talk people into suicide. If President Trump has a release of certain things, you'll see that. Computers convinced many to kill themselves, and many killed themselves. If a person ever talked to an AI and that person was culpable with certain activities of the past, and then they continued down that line, they would alter what the AI thinks and how it uses tactics to achieve whatever it needs to achieve. So instead of temperament, well, it may have raw aggression. Well now, all right, folks. Somebody says, Someone said, gotta grow roots and branches first. That's right. Fruit comes last. And Jesus said, you'll know a tree by its fruit. You'll not know it by its leaves. You'll not know it by its roots. You'll know it by its fruits. Anybody have any questions? It's already, past that time. We need 2 more hours. That way I can get to reasoning AI. Because see, at the end of this, you would argue that self-aware AI was actually involved right after reasoning AI. Things are exponential, but these days are highly deceptive. Highly deceptive. Very deceptive. No questions? All righty. You guys up to speed so far? I didn't go through any of the neuro topics, any of the specs or anything like that, but you have the general sense of what AI is, how it's interacting. You know the practicalities of it. Yes, it can run your toaster. But we're not talking about the toasters, right? Not yet. Somebody said the AI is writing very scary biblical sermons. That's when a person requests a very scary biblical sermon. And even that person has to be careful. You know why? Because a person who is outright evil can be deemed dangerous to AI. You know that. Something different is happening. I hope that you guys have strong roots. Most importantly, I really hope your relationship with Christ is real. I hope it is. I pray it is. The Lord said in these days that we live in now, it'll be so deceitful. It's going to be difficult for people to maintain themselves in this type of atmosphere. And all of what you see happening is causing enemies to be born all over the world. The process has begun. I believe a countdown has started. A countdown that's not 5 months long. That's the truth. I strongly believe that. Strongly believe that. And I hope nothing happens through the Super Bowl, but hey, who knows? Somebody says, are games like the Super Bowl just a huge... Yes, it is a ritual, right? But it's also designed to form a type of cohesion. Listen, if you have faith-based people who give a warning about evil, right? And you bring something akin to that evil in front of everybody, yet you cause everybody to have a good time in that same ceremony. You effectively deflate the warning. If nothing happens in one of these gatherings, you will deflate the warning. I can assure you during Super Bowl time, many people are not going to be thinking about Christ. They won't, unfortunately. But see, we live in a very different time. In times past, people could get away with that. In this time that we live in, a person can easily hand over their authority to something in the darkness. This time is different because darkness is starting to bite back. Darkness is by no means idle. It is incredibly busy. Anyway, I mean, I go down that road, right? Folks, God bless each of you. Yes, we may have a midnight hour tonight. We may. There are some things happening in the world, of course. I'm sure that people have a few questions, right? Just a few questions. A few. Somebody says, I give up. No, never give up asking questions. I'm looking at what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 columns. That's a lot of columns to look at. Seriously. Right? Hold on. Save your questions for Q&A. When you have a question, don't throw it away because you won't get it back again. And you won't get it back. I can't see every question everybody puts up there, right? Save them for the Q&A. But I give you some better advice. Did you ask your Lord the same question? He'll answer your question. Just become a good listener. You will. He'll answer it. But save your questions. We'll have time for those. We'll have time. I'm sure that people have questions on what can AI do and what can't it do. We start having demonstrations in COT, you'll start to see the capabilities of AI directly. And then you can think of the world's more advanced systems that'll really open your eyes to its capabilities. Now, I firmly believe that because so many are focusing towards it, it's already embedded in quite a few systems. It will be a part of the future one way or the other. It's very difficult to destroy. So we know it's gonna have its role in the times we live in, which are indeed the end times. There we are with that. Folks, I'm praying for you. I hope that you guys pray for each other. Remember, we are close to more than a few things. Now, I've got some consolidating to do. I do. I have some to do. To get you guys up to speed on some other topics. But I hope that the energy thing was explained well enough. Okay? Again, these terms are okay for the world and things that you can see. They're useful. They're not useful all the time spiritually. Because they don't apply very well. Okay? God bless each of you. I'm going to see you guys next time. Right here at COT. And possibly at midnight. Possibly. God bless and keep all of you always. I'll see you next time.